Who doesn't like a good heist movie? I'll admit, I haven't watched the original Ocean's 11, but I thoroughly enjoyed Ocean's 8, showing that not only do I have trash taste in games, but also trash taste in movies. But I think I found inspiration for the next Ocean's movie. With all the buzz around cryptocurrencies these days, I recently decided to, invest some money into Ethereum. I also figured if I was going to be throwing my money at something, I should probably know what I'm throwing my money at. And it turned out Ethereum is really cool. And not just because there's a literal heist in its origin story. So I have another video planned to explain Ethereum from the ground up, but for this one, I'm just trying to get my origin story as a Hollywood writer started. Also, due to recent events, I feel like I have to say, this is not investment advice, nor am I a financial advisor. I just like the coin. Okay, so every good story needs some exposition, but as with all things computer science, the exposition for this story is probably 420 pages long, so I'll try to do my best to summarize. Ethereum is a cryptocurrency second most popular to, of course, that's right, Dogecoin. Just kidding, yeah, it's Bitcoin. Ethereum, like Bitcoin, operates off the central principle of blockchains. If you haven't heard of them, a very vast oversimplification would be they are a method of immutable bookkeeping that allows for decentralized consensus on transaction history. Now, if that made no sense to you, don't worry, it made less sense to me. I'm just reading off of Wikipedia. Okay, so jokes aside, blockchain would be too much to cover in this video, but the important bit to understand is that it's a very secure method of making and receiving payments that also doesn't require you to trust one central authority, like a bank or a government. I'll link to a YouTube video by 3Blue1Brown, which has a phenomenal explanation of blockchain technology. I highly recommend checking it out. Unlike Bitcoin though, Ethereum provides a lot of other functionality other than just payments, in the form of the Ethereum network. To talk about the Ethereum network though, we first had to talk about miners. No, not that kind, but close enough I guess. In Bitcoin, we have a bunch of computers all around the world performing what we call mining, which is basically this decentralized payments verification process. It's hard work and the reward for it is more Bitcoin or Ether in Ethereum's case. This is why we make the analog to mining. Ethereum takes this one step further and introduces the idea of decentralized applications, where data and computing resources for these dApps, as they're called, are performed by these miners. So, in Ethereum, the miners perform more than just the complicated payments verification, they might also perform whatever storage and processing is required by that application. Alright, so now that we've sat through that incredibly boring introductory bit, and have finished all our popcorn already, we're getting to the good stuff. On April 30th, 2016, something called the DAO launched from Germany. It's always Germany, isn't it? By these two brothers. I won't even try pronouncing their last names. So the DAO, TM, was an example of a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. So you can see these two had an absolute burst of creativity when naming their new endeavor. The idea behind the DAO, and DAOs in general, is to act as a cryptocurrency-based decentralized venture capital fund. Essentially, there was a crowdfunding period of 28 days where the DAO, TM, accepted Ether investments from individuals who wanted voting power in future dApp developments. It essentially seeked to pair future dApp developers that were looking for a source of funding with people who wanted to invest their money in said dApps in exchange for both voting power and also a hopeful ROI. To be honest, this all seems like a lot of work for return on investment. I personally prefer YOLOing my money on Tesla 0DTE call options. By the end of the 28-day investment period, the DAO had raised over 150 million USD in capital from over 11,000 different investors. A number of proposals were in the works and things were looking good. But this was the calm before the storm. Around May 2016, a few different individuals noticed that there were potential security vulnerabilities in the DAO's contract code that could be exploited. A fix was developed and went to the Ethereum network for approval by June 16th, but as the original Debbie Downer himself, Murphy, would have it, on June 17th, the DAO was hacked. The security vulnerability that was called out in May of that year was precisely what an enterprising young hacker or hackers was able to use to siphon off about 1/3 of the Ethereum holdings of the DAO. Estimates of the money lost seem to vary as far as I could tell. I'm not sure if this has to do with the fact that there were multiple different siphons over time, and it's impossible to tell how much was the OG hacker and how much was due to copycats, or if the variance in estimates can be attributed to different exchange rates being used, but it seems anywhere between 50 to 70 million USD was stolen. As a result of this hack also, Ethereum decreased in value from 20 USD to 13 USD, stirring up quite the panic. Absolute amateurs. The Ethereum community was understandably shook by these events. Gradually, talks emerged about whether they should intervene. If 70 million is stolen from a bank in hard cash, that's basically that. Unless someone can track down the thief, that money can never really be restored. With Ethereum, however, this story is a little bit different. There were two competing proposals made to resolve this heist, a soft fork and a hard fork. The soft fork approach called for an update to be optionally released for miners to download, emphasis on optional. If you as a miner decided to forego the update, you would still be able to continue mining and using Ethereum, and you would also be able to communicate with miners that were on the new update. The update basically blacklisted the hacker's account address, making it so that new miners would reject any transaction involving that address, essentially locking the hacker's funds down so that they could not access them. A majority of the Ethereum user base agreed with this proposal, which meant it was a good way to at least prevent the hacker from capitalizing on his dastardly deal. The hard fork proposal was considerably juicier and oh so controversial. The hard fork basically proposed literally branching the blockchain at a transaction prior to the hack and marking the old chain as obsolete and requiring miners to follow the new chain. To briefly explain why this was so controversial, we had to go back to the idea of blockchain being a decentralized and ideally unchangeable record of verified transactions. The hard fork basically flies in the face of all of that, at least from a purist point of view. No one person or group should be able to influence the state of the blockchain, but with a hard fork, a majority of the Ethereum users were coming together to form a body that could rewrite the history of transactions. So not only was the immutable blockchain being mutated, it was being done by a central authority too, since the fork proposals were made by prominent figures inside the Ethereum community. This was unacceptable to crypto purists, and just like any other miffed purists, they took to Reddit to complain. This whole thing was made even juicier when the hacker, or someone posing as him or her, responded to the fork proposals. They released this strongly worded letter to the community, arguing that their exploitation was fair use and even legal, since the contract code of the DAO is the final arbiter of transactions, and everyone investing in the DAO should have known the risks and also should have had ample opportunity to peruse the terms of the contract, that is, read the code. He also made the crypto purist argument that a fork would lessen the community confidence in Ethereum as an unchangeable decentralized platform, and then topped the letter off with threatening legal action against theft against him or her. He also made the crypto purist argument that a fork would lessen the community confidence in Ethereum as an unchangeable decentralized platform, and topped the letter off with threatening legal action against theft against him or her. If the DAO were some billionaire's corporation, I might almost be inclined to see this hacker as some sort of digital Green Arrow or Robin Hood. Not that that makes it legal or even morally correct, but since the whole idea of the DAO was to be a community-driven fundraising effort, likely a lot of the stolen ether belonged to individual investors like your average Joe Schmo. It makes it really hard to even see the hacker's side of the argument. So we had these two proposals, soft and hard forks. A good majority of the community was on board for the soft fork, but the hard fork was quite the controversy. But, just like any good story, the easy answer never works out, because that would be boring. Shortly after the proposal was made, a problem was found in the soft fork idea. It essentially opened Ethereum to a denial of service attack, whereby if the soft fork was implemented, a future attacker could potentially take down the Ethereum network by exploiting the blacklisted address. With the soft fork shut down, the only other proposal left was the hard fork. I'll admit, the only reason I went with this 5-act story writing gimmick was so that I could absolutely butcher the word denouement. So the resolution to this story is that on July 20th, 2016, the hard fork was implemented, branching the Ethereum blockchain at block 192,000, essentially rolling back the timeline and making it as if the hack had never happened. All stolen funds were restored to the original investors, and it was happily ever after. Right? Well, not exactly. Not everyone agreed with the decision to hard fork the blockchain, but because Ethereum has no central authority, no one could force miners to mine the new chain. Some stubbornly stuck to the old chain, and people continued transacting on it. This led to the birth of a new currency, Ethereum Classic, ticker symbol ETC. Classic because the coin represented transactions on the OG blockchain. Something interesting to note is that because miners continued working on the original blockchain, that meant that, in their worldview, the hacker had successfully gotten away with his hack. I'm unsure as to whether or not that hacker actually was able to cash out on this stolen ETC funds, but it's possible he did. And so that concludes the story of the great digital heist of 2016. Thanks for watching. If you found this somewhat educational or mildly entertaining, please demolish that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. See you in the next one.